Okay guys, I am here today to talk to you about the new Denise Williams book, and I'm just gonna say it right up front. I don't know how to review this book. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, so in the course of this video, we're gonna figure it out together. But I have a lot of thoughts and I have a lot of feelings and I don't know what to do with them. And it is just because of how amazing Denise Williams' books have been for me in the past and what this one is. But like compared to other romance novels, okay. Let's start this off like a normal person should. So today I am reviewing the new Denise Williams book, Do You Take This Man? If you think that name is familiar but you don't know why, in the past couple of years I have reviewed arcs of Denise's first book and her sophomore book. The first one was How to Fail at Flirting, and the second one was The Fastest Way to Fall. There have also, I think, been some like airport novella situations that she's written that are out now that you can read. I haven't read those. I don't know what those are like. So to me, this is, well, it's definitely her third full-length novel, and it's the third thing by her that I've read. And the first two were exceptionally spectacular. The first one had like a beautiful relationship, like very awkward like work situation, but also talked about past relationships with trauma and some with violence, mostly mental, but that book does have that in it. So it's not always my first recommendation in case that is a trigger for anybody, but it was exceptionally well done. It was much deeper than I gave it credit for when I started it. I mean, the title was How to Fail at Flirting, so expecting some kind of deep emotional story was not what I was expecting, and still within a very sweet and funny romance novel. So I was like, oh my goodness, this woman is amazing. I love her. And then when she came out with Fastest Way to Fall, this followed a plus size fitness, I don't want to say fanatic, but she ends up signing up for a fitness app and getting paired with a personal trainer who happens to be the CEO of the app. There's a lot of incredible discussion about, you know, fitness and body shape, but also body dysmorphia and eating disorders. And having read some recently that try to do that in a romance novel and don't do it well, that was just like, oh, this is what this is supposed to look like. And again, a really cute romance novel paired with these really deeper themes. And then on both sides, sometimes in a romance novel, there's one person who's a little bit more maybe got less going on than the other person. And in these novels, I think what's been great is that both sides of the pairing have both had stuff going on that has made their personal growth very rich. And so to say that I had high expectations for Do You Take This Man, the third one here, is like an understatement. That is super underselling how high the bar was when I went to start this book. So Do You Take This Man starts off telling you about RJ, a high-powered African-American divorce attorney who last year happened to be in a park. There were some famous people getting married, and they were these two guys who had both played, I guess, in like a superhero movie, and one had been the superhero, one had been the villain, and they were getting married, and they wanted to do a spur of the moment elopement. RJ was nearby and she officiated this wedding, having been certified earlier. It's not entirely clear how that all fell together. This happens before the book starts and you don't get a flashback or anything. But basically, between the fact that RJ was a divorce attorney and she married these famous people, like it was this great story. And so she's become a little bit of a minor officiant celebrity. And so people at the firm where she works, where she's a junior lawyer, were like, oh my God, can you marry my grandkids? Can you marry me? Can you marry my kids? Can you marry my cousins, aunts, whatever? And so she started booking weddings to mostly appease these clients, appease the, you know, more senior lawyers who she works with, because she's making the clients happy. And that's where she is in her life, but she doesn't really actually believe in romance. I mean, she's a divorce lawyer and she's had some bad experiences in her past, both with people that her mom was in a relationship with and people that she's been in a relationship with. So she's just not, romance is not for her. So enter Lear. Lear has relocated to this part of California after being an event planner for his favorite professional football organization. However, he was fired from that job after he defended, I believe, a member of the catering staff, a female member of the catering staff, from one of the players who was definitely performing some sexual harassment. Again, we only get this from Lear's description, but basically he stepped in, there was a little bit of a fight, and because Lear had the audacity to put hands on one of the team's star players, he was fired. Because, you know, the team was like, oh, the sexual harassment is fine, but the fact that he's bruised is not. So Lear was out. He relocates to the town where he grew up in and starts working with his cousin Penny, who runs a wedding planning business. He's never really done weddings before, but he thinks, well, how can this be that much different than planning events for a professional football team, right? And that is how he and RJ come to be pushed together, but not before they have the most awful meat disaster in which RJ is getting out of a cab. She literally runs into Lear, trips and falls. They have kind of a caustic encounter that ends with Lear just being so frustrated by her behavior that he says, well, you should smile more, which means that RJ just wants to laser beam him to death. And come to find out, now they have to work together the entire summer on a number of different weddings. One of the fun things about this story is that I feel like with enemies to lovers story, there is normally like a beat where they're enemies and they really don't like each other, and then they start to like each other, and so they start sleeping together because they've liked each other. And I think what's really nice about this book is that Lear and RJ recognize that they are sexually attracted to each other, and that's fine. Like, they don't need to have caught feelings. They can just kind of scratch this itch together and, you know, just do that and still kind of agree that they don't very much like each other. And so I liked that there was that bit there where they're sleeping together, they're not really getting along, and then kind of through sleeping together and working together, they realize, oh, maybe there are some feelings there. So that was a little bit different, and I liked that. And also led to some spicy scenes earlier, which was great. Loved that. Didn't have to wait for them to fall in love. They could just, you know, there's a supply closet in this wedding venue. Let's go. I also talk a lot about how I really love books with emotional intelligence. Basically just meaning that, like, they're, you know, those books where like the conflict is just because they're not communicating properly and it just feels very artificial, all of the conflict. And Denise Williams is absolutely an ace at making these characters who are emotionally complicated. And I think this is probably the first book where the main characters were both, I'm going to say, emotionally gray, in which case I'm saying that they both have negative aspects to their personalities that, you know, they're not like trying to be mean, they're not trying to be awful people, they are trying to live their life in the best way that they know how. But some of the behaviors that they have basically brought into their own lives are not great, they're a little bit toxic. And so those things kind of spill out into their relationship with each other, and they have to do self-work and they have to do couple work to eventually, you know, make their way through that. It's not something they can do entirely on their own, but it's not something that, you know, falling in love is going to fix, right? And so that, I think, really is the emotional core of this novel. It's very esoterically emotional, intrinsic things that they have to work on with themselves to become the kind of people that they feel the other person can love. Again, here's the problem, right? So that whole setup, like, I love a good enemies to lovers, I love a book with a lot of spice, I love an emotionally intelligent novel, but I think for me, there's an issue with this, right? Because among many other romance novels that I've read, this book is above them, right? Because it is so interesting, it's so emotional, it's so intellectual, like, I mean, not in like a very stodgy way, but just in a, you know, human beings are complicated, and it's not all just like kiss, kiss, fall in love, all my problems go away, right? The problem is that this book is now put in a continuum with Denise Williams' other two books, right? And so when you do that with the other two books that she's written, I do feel like this one falls short. And the reason is that this book is so focused on Lear and RJ that everything else is very extra or ancillary. And that is not what I'm used to in Denise Williams' books, because normally there's that extra layer of, like I said, the, you know, post-emotional abuse, trying to get back into dating situation that was happening there. There's stuff with drugs and eating disorders and fastest way to fall. And while you do find out later on in the book, and I can't tell you what it is because it would spoil it, that there is something really traumatic that has happened to Lear that has made, it makes his character make a little bit more sense. You don't find that out until later, and it's kind of kept back as sort of like a reveal towards the end, which I'm not a fan of. Whereas RJ, you know, she just has trouble expressing emotions and feeling like she deserves to be loved in the correct way. So no, again, that's not a bad thing, but it was just so internal when there has been so much family, friend, extra stuff going on in these other novels that it was really, I don't want to say weird, frustrating. It just wasn't what I expected, right? That could be a good thing for you if you don't like those other novels. It could be a bad thing for you if you did. There's also like this, like a good example is that RJ's job as a lawyer is considered, it's like her most important thing. And I really did enjoy that her senior lawyer, like mentor at the place where she works, her name is Gretchen. And so I was like, oh my God, no one ever has my name. And Gretchen's a pretty great character, and that was really fun, but whatever. But like that, there's a whole storyline kind of going on. There's like a huge case RJ is supposed to be working on, and it does have repercussions towards the end of the novel, but it's like really in the background and almost, I think, kind of has to be dragged through the rest of the novel to like make some stuff happen in the end. That felt really weird. It's not like Denise Williams in a book to have a storyline like that so underdeveloped. So that was weird. And also I could have had more Gretchen if there was more of that plotline. So again, to summarize it, the reason that I struggle with this is just that, like, I do think as like a couple relationship book, this is a cut above other books like it. But I think in terms of what I've come to expect from a Denise Williams book, it is, I don't want to say below my expectations, but it just doesn't reach the level of her first two books for me. And so, of course, that feels disappointing. Was it a bad book? Absolutely not. But right, there's like a, like, how do you rate that? How do you review that when there's like multiple scales and its position on those scales is wildly different? I don't know, which is why this is probably one of my longer single book reviews that I've done in a while, because I just don't, I want to make sure I'm properly explaining myself, because I don't want people to not read this book. But I also think that people who are going to read it because they love Denise Williams should probably check their expectations a little bit, and maybe you would enjoy it more. So this book is out already. I didn't get it as an ARC, I just got it from my library. So if you've already read it, if you have thoughts, feelings, you know, maybe this is your first Denise Williams book, maybe it's only your second, maybe you didn't like the other ones. Like, if you have different opinions or other thoughts, leave them down in the comments and we'll chat about it. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Thanks. Bye.